experience to succeed in Vietnam and Australia. So my name is Ha, Managing Director of Advanced Partners and Co-Chair of the AABN Education and Skills Sector. It is a great pleasure for me to be moderating today's webinar. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging and thanking the AABN Education and Skills Sector Committees and our co-hosts, including Vietnam Australia Scholar and Experts Association, VASEA, the Australian government, dear our community, as well as the speakers for your generous contribution of time, knowledge, and insight to today's session. So just a quick housekeeping note before we begin. During the presentation, please feel free to submit your questions by the chat box. We will be collecting these and addressing them during the panel discussions and live Q&A session at the end. As reflected in today's agenda, which I'm showing on the screen now, we'll be exploring both strategic and practical perspectives from legal frameworks and operating models through to the real-world experiences of business working across Vietnam and Australia. So our goal today is to unpack not just what works, but why partnerships succeed and fail in practice. So to begin, it is my pleasure to warmly welcome and introduce Ms. Sarah Hooper, the Australian Consul General in Ho Chi Minh City. Hello, Sarah. Sarah brings deep experience in advancing Australia-Vietnam relations, particularly in trade, investment, and institutional collaborations. Her perspective is especially valuable as we set the context of today's discussion on cross-border partnership. Please join me in warmly welcome Sarah for her opening remarks.
Xin chào, everyone, and thank you, Ha, for that warm introduction. It's a genuine pleasure to join the Australian Alumni Business Network and VASEA for this important discussion. The Australian Alumni Business Network was built on a simple but powerful insight that the most credible ambassadors for Australian-Vietnam collaboration are the people who have lived, studied, and built businesses across both countries. The consulate has supported the AABN's development precisely because it embodies the kind of deep, trusted, people-to-people connections that no policy framework can manufacture on its own. That people-to-people foundation is also central to Australia's national strategy for the region. In Invested, Australia's Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040, launched by the Australian government and developed in consultation with businesses across ASEAN, 75 practical recommendations across 10 priority sectors have been identified. 4 of these sectors that are particularly important for Vietnam are the focus of the AABN's activities: education and skills, the digital economy, green energy transition, and agriculture and food. By 2040, ASEAN taken together is projected to become the world's 4th largest economy. Australia's ambition under the Invested strategy is to be a leading partner in that expansion, and Vietnam is at the centre of our ambition. Networks like AABN are how that ambition becomes real. We're also very excited to see that the AABN membership has been growing, attracting a lot of attention and interest, and now reaching over 500 members. Thank you to those of you who have recently joined, and please let all your friends know. I'd also like to take this opportunity to let you know the AABN is organising a forum called the Vietnam-Australia Green Energy Transition Forum for 2026, to be held on the 9th of April here in Ho Chi Minh City. The forum will be hosted by the Green Energy Transition and the Agricultural and Food subcommittees of the AABN. It will bring together 200 leaders from both countries across policy, investment, industry, research, and innovation to explore practical pathways for green growth and long-term partnership, spotlighting key themes including clean energy, sustainable agriculture, advanced manufacturing, green finance, and innovation-led development. So don't miss it. My boss, Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong, has said on a number of occasions, the Australian-Vietnam bilateral relationship has never been stronger. We can see this in the relationship between our governments, but also in our trade and business-to-business relationship. At an official government-to-government level, Prime Ministers Albanese and Pham Minh Chinh elevated our relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership in March 2024, placing Australia in the top tier of Vietnam's global partners, alongside the United States, Japan, India, among others. In October 2024, the two countries signed a CSP action plan. Now, less than 18 months later, 96% of the 180 agreed actions are either completed or are on track. We're very proud of these achievements, but we realise that there are still so many more opportunities. Looking at trade, the pace of bilateral trade has accelerated dramatically in recent years. In 2024-25, two-way trade in goods and services reached over $28 billion Australian dollars, a figure that would have been almost unimaginable a decade ago, and one that reflects 8.6% annual growth in bilateral trade over the past 20 years, consistently outpacing Australia's overall trade growth and its trade with ASEAN as a whole. I'm going to pause here. Can people see me? Or can you just see my picture?
Yeah. We can see you. Yeah.
Excellent. I can't see me, so I'm glad that you can. That's the best way to do this. So as I was saying, we can see that Australian and Vietnamese businesses have been identifying and pursuing opportunities in each other's countries, which brings me to why today's conversation is so timely and so useful. Strategies and statistics can tell you that a market is attractive. What they cannot tell you is how decisions are actually made, how trust is built across different business cultures, and where costly mistakes hide. That knowledge lives with practitioners, people who have been in the room, made the missteps, and learned to navigate both systems. For Australian businesses, this webinar, brought to you by the Education and Skills Subcommittee of AABN, offers an honest account of what it actually takes to succeed in Vietnam, including understanding the regulatory landscape, relationship dynamics, the legal frameworks, and the unwritten rules. For Vietnamese businesses, I hope this offers the same clarity about Australia, a sophisticated, compliance-driven market with its own norms and expectations, where local knowledge is the difference between a partnership that works and ones that do not. And I'm pleased to say that today's webinar provides exactly the kind of capability building that the invested strategy calls for, and exactly the kind of advice that the AABN was created to provide. You have a great group of speakers here today. I hope the conversation is candid, practical, and gives you something that you can act on. I hope everyone learns a great deal. Thank you very much to the AABN Education and Skills Sector Committee co-chairs and the task force team who worked so hard to make this webinar here happen today. This webinar won't tell you how to walk across the road, but it will give you deeper insights to make your business and investment journey one that successfully strengthens the Australia-Vietnam partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your insightful remarks. I must have said that without Sarah, we don't have the AABN as we are today. You've been extremely instrumental, providing support, encouragement for what we've been doing over the last 9 months now. Yeah, thank you so much. So what we really stand out from what Sarah shared is the strength and momentum of Australia and Vietnam relationship. From the elevation to a comprehensive strategic partnership to a very strong growth in trade over the last decade, and importantly, the central role of people-to-people connections in making that partnership work in practice. You also touched, Sarah, on a very critical point that while strategy and data can highlight opportunities, it is the practical understanding of how systems operate, how trust is built, and how decisions are made that ultimately determine success. So obviously, AABN, we do have the power of the people who care, who understand the birth system. I myself also Australian alumni. I chose to stay and work in Australia, but we have the speakers like Mr. Nyet, for example. We on the same scholarship from Australian government more than 30 years ago to show our age. But Mr. Nyet is chose to come and work and stay in Vietnam. So just to show that the support from the Australian government and the Consul General is tremendous to make that happen. So before we enter into our today's agenda, I just like to see that where you were joining from. Obviously, that we have a strong interest from people not just in Vietnam, in Australia. So just a matter of interest to see where you're joining from. You can scan the QR code here, and then you can just answer on your phone. Thank you for answering. So obviously, seems like Vietnam is a clear winner. Thank you so much for spending the morning with us. Australia is catching up. We also want to understand the reason why you are interested in this webinar, whether because you are thinking of entering the market in Vietnam and Australia both, or Vietnam only, or Australia only, or still at the stage of you are currently just exploring. Wow, that's very impressive that we almost have. Yeah, so a majority is obviously like interested in both Vietnam and Australia opportunities. We have some Australia only, clearly from Vietnam going want to exploring opportunities to export to Australia. And we do have a group also just here to understand and what's there first before you start doing things. So thank you so much for answering this. So before we start with the agenda with our featured speakers today, so it's just some interesting facts about Australia and Vietnam that I found that the two countries absolutely complement each other about the resources. See that Australia is the big country, roughly 23 times larger inland area compared to Vietnam, but Vietnam has nearly 4 times the populations. So in terms of economic velocity, the GDP growth rate in Australia usually hovering about 2 to 3%. I never seen that even that I've been here in Australia 29 years myself, never seen that the government put the growth as a top. The priority is always about control the inflations. And obviously that what's happening in the world currently, the government or the Reserve Bank of Australia using very quickly the monetary policy to increase the interest rate to control the inflation. But we can see that there's a lot of activities in Vietnam. Vietnam is growing more than twice as fast compared to Australia, while positioning itself as a connected economy in the global supply chains. Another thing is that we see that the Australia's strength lie in the high value services. For example, that we have education, iron ore, mining, finance sector is one, or agriculture. The few very strong sectors of Australia. And Vietnam is actually starting moving away from a low value manufacturing to a high value services. So the populations in Vietnam, when I do this table, it's very interesting fact that I found that the core working age in Australia spending from 15 to 64, in Vietnam 15 to 59. Usually, but I can't even see myself retiring at 64. And I think that Matt, you're probably the same. So we really work long. We don't have a retirement age in Australia at all. So just to show that is the resources in Vietnam and Australia are really complement each other. And creating a big opportunities if the two countries' business can be a partnering and collaborating. But in practice, many partnerships still struggle. And the reasons is that the simple success in cross-border collaboration is just about the opportunity, but it also is about alignment as well. Alignment in expectation, in how decisions are made, in understanding regulatory system, and in how trust is built. Vietnam and Australia operate very differently, and I can see that being here 29 years, working in tax and accounting, and working a lot with the legal system as well. What I can say that what works in one market doesn't automatically translate to the other market. So the question we want to explore today is that why do some partnerships succeed and why others fail? And what do businesses need to do differently to make them work in practice? So which brings us to our first and foremost critical lenses, which is the legal framework. Because in many cases, partnerships don't fail due to lack of opportunity, but due to a misunderstanding how legal and regulatory system actually operate in each market. So to help us unpack this, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Trần Thị Quang Hồng. Hồng, are you there on the? Yes.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Great, thank you so much. Who will walk us through the key legal differences between Vietnam and Australia that business need to understand and avoid costly mistakes. So before I hand over to Hồng, I just want to talk briefly about her bio or profile or background. So Dr. Hồng is a governance and legal system specialist with experiences across Vietnam and Australia. So she currently works at the Parliament of Victoria in Melbourne, supporting parliamentary procedure and legislative processes within the Westminster system. So before moving to Australia, and she came to Australia as a Monash alumni doing a PhD in law. I don't know how you do a PhD in law, by the way, but you are actively involved in Vietnam legal and policy reform, contributing to the drafting of the civil code and other key legal instruments. So Hồng also worked as a consultant on governance reform projects supported by organizations such as the UNDP, ADB, and GCA. So with experience in both systems, Hồng brings a valuable comparative perspective on regulatory frameworks and how organizations operate across different contexts. So in addition to your parliamentary role now, you're also the author of Legal Writing Skills for Legal Practitioners. You write the books. Your books is now on the second edition now. So Hồng spent a lot of time continue to focus on strengthening legal thinking and professional capacity in the field. So welcome, Hồng, and over to you.
Can you hear me and see me? Hi, Ha, can you hear me and see me?
I can hear you very well. I was seeing you before. I'm not sure where you are now.
I think we can see chị Hồng too. Yeah. See our hotline. Yeah.
Yep.
Great. So thank you, Ha, for the kind introduction. And I would also like to thank AABN and VASEA for the opportunity to join these significant discussions. I'm here today not only as someone who have worked within both the Vietnamese and Australian systems, but also as a researcher strongly interested in comparing regulatory systems. The observations I will share today draw from those experiences. Please note that the views expressed here are my own and do not represent the view of the Parliament Victoria, where I work. When organizations from different countries start working together, the challenges are often not about intention or capabilities. They are about understanding how each system works. For that reason, I would like to share my observation on how to understand the system, read the system, engage with the system, and build credibility. So, first of all, understand the system. One Australia does not mean one decision maker. So, understand who actually decide, save time and effort. Australia has a 3-level governments: federal, state, and local government. Each level has its own responsibilities and real decision-making authority. A Vietnamese organization may approach a federal agency expecting a decision, believing that it is at the highest level. But for a particular issue, the relevant authority may actually sit at the state or local level. Each level of government is also accountable through its own institutional and oversight framework rather than being controlled by the upper level. While it may look like a hierarchy, as you can see in the slide, in practice, these levels do not operate through command and control. Each level has its own defined authority and operates independently within that scope. At the same time, there are strong mechanisms for coordination and information sharing. Coordination exists, but control does not. Every business should understand the jurisdiction before conducting any negotiation or taking any significant action. For example, company registration in Australia is handled at the federal level through a national regulator called Australian Securities and Investment Commission, in short, ASIC. However, after registration, a company also needs to work with all levels of government on various issues: federal on corporate tax, ABN, and competition law; with state level on payroll tax and licensing in some industry; and with local on local planning permits or zoning. Understanding who actually decide can save months of time and effort. In contrast, in Vietnam, lower level may rely more on direction or coordination from higher levels. This is not just a structural difference. It affects how innovation is regulated in practice. For example, so still the previous slide. For example, regulatory models such as sandbox frameworks, which require flexibility and decentralized decision-making, tend to be more readily implemented in Australia, where authority is more distributed. In Vietnamese context, I have explored this in my book on regulatory sandbox, and also has the opportunity to provide input on the specific sandbox provision during the development of the capital city law. As a request of a member of the National Assembly's Legal Committee, a recurring challenge is how governance structure shape the ability to implement more flexible regulatory approaches. So next, how to read the system. Read the system, thank you. How transparent it is and how can you benefit from it? In Australia, policy and decision-making processes are transparent and publicly available through a wide range of mechanisms such as consultation papers, parliamentary committee inquiries, regulatory impact statements, open procurement data, or freedom of information. Let me give you a brief example. When Victoria was considering policy to accelerate its transition to renewable energy, the Parliament refers issue to a parliamentary committee. These committees play an important role in connecting the parliament with the public. As a part of the inquiry, the committee invited submission from all relevant stakeholders, from the members of the public to companies to associations engaged in renewable energy and also fossil fuel energy. And then they conducted public hearing to examine the issue in more depth. It then reported back to Parliament with findings and recommendations, and the government is required to respond within 6 months, which it did and actually implemented some recommendation in the report. What it means in practice is that transparency in Australia is not just about compliance, it is a sort of insight. Business can track regulation thinking, anticipate policy shift, and prepare ahead of market reactions. And next, engage with the system. Do you have a voice? The answer is yes. A number of channels are available for you to raise your voice on policy issues. On your own, you can submit your submission to the parliamentary inquiry or attend public hearing. Or you can provide your input through the consultation processes. Or you can also participate via your representatives, such as industrial bodies, professional association, or elected representatives in the parliaments or local councils. It should be noted that influence is based on procedures and structure, not relationship-based. Lobbying has its own legal framework. Advocacy must be transparent, and engagement should be framed by public interest to be effective. Engagement in Australia is also based largely on processes rather than personal relationships. Whether you are new, you can always connect with business partner via industrial association. For example, Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Victoria, or its equivalent in other states, or the federal, or networking events. So even before entering the market, organizations can explore available channels, such as industry association or chamber of commerce. For example, when I first arrived in Melbourne from Vietnam, I applied to join the Victorian Chamber of Commerce in industry. Shortly after submitting my application, I received a phone call from the president just to check if I had received the welcome information. This reflects a broader professional culture where accessibility and responsiveness are part of how institutions operate. Government agencies can also be very supportive in Victoria. Organizations such as Global Victoria or Invest Victoria provide assistance to businesses engaging internationally. Similarly, agencies exist in other states. In Vietnam, engagement tends to be more relationship-based, and access to the right networks can play a significant role in how effectively you engage with the system. So last but not least, how can you thrive in the system? By building credibility and trust over time. In Australia, trust is often built through the system, not just relationships. So it you need to rely very much on clear documentation, well-structured contracts, compliance and regulation, and consistent professional conduct. These practices help organizations build long-term credibility with partners and institutions. So, in summary, 4 things are particularly helpful. First, understand how the system is structured and get to know who makes decisions on what. Second, read the signals. Third, engage through institutions. And last but not least, building credibility over time. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Hồng, for that very insightful presentation. So what really stand out to me is that how different the Australian system is in practice. So from a multi-level government structures where there isn't a single decision makers. Obviously, that the government has been structured the way that the federal doesn't mean the federal government is superior to state, because they are power under, in the constitution, in the law, and the authorities already have at the different level of government, regardless of the ranking. And Australian legal system is also very transparent, process-driven, and businesses are expected to engage through formal channels and understand how decisions are actually made. You also highlighted a very important shift in mindset, that in Australia, credibility and trust are built less through personal relationship alone and more through consistency, documentation, and compliance over time. And I can relate back to the work that I'm doing because I'm advising in terms of tax and obviously some business, Vietnam coming to Australia, for example. So we can easily reach out to the government at the state levels. For example, in Victoria, we have the Global Victoria, or in Queensland, we have Trade and Investment Queensland. Similar like other states, we have the similar organizations. And the government at the state level is very helpful in providing all sort of informations and in terms of even like connecting people to the right business as well. So if I may, I'd like to ask you one question to bring this into practice. So how should Vietnamese business adjust their approach? Because you've been in Vietnam legal system many years before you decided to stay and work in Australia. So and you can see both, and how should Vietnamese business adjust their approach when dealing with government authority in Australia compared to how they might typically engage in Vietnam? Hello, Hong, you there? Hello? We miss Hong for some reason.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I was on mute.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah. So thanks you for the question, and it is it's very important to understand how you should change your approach when entering the Australian market. So I would emphasize one key shift: approach to the system through institutions, not through personal relationships. In Australia, even if you know someone inside a government agency, they are often not in a position to advise or influence matters outside formal processes. For example, I have a friend working in visa decision making, but when we discuss a visa policy, she would step back and not offer a view. I have also seen this in practice. A delegation from a leading Vietnamese economic group once struggled to find a business partner. I simply help them identify the relevant industry association and suggested they reach out directly. They later had a very productive trip. They thought it was because of my introduction, but it wasn't. They succeeded because they accessed the system in the right way. Another example is about engaging with government. A delegation once asked if they could arrange a meeting with the parliament on education. Because of that, I told them I suggested them contacting the education minister's office, but the minister's schedule was full. When we clarified the issue further, it was about supporting international students. I suggested they approach study management instead. They did and had a very productive working sessions. This also highlights an important point. Going to a higher level does not necessarily make things easier. In Australia, matters are usually handled by the relevant authority at the appropriate level. Approaching a higher level to influence a lower level in general, not how the system operates. So the key is not just knowing the right person. It is about going through the right processes and if engaging with the right institution at the right level. So yeah, that comes to the end of my answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hong. Can't agree more with you. Definitely, what we see is that the information that provided by the Australian government and who should you contact, it's really easy to navigate, easy to use, and I strongly suggest that Vietnamese business, when you go, you consider exploring the opportunities to expand the market and sell your product or services here, reach out. Obviously, that's it. It's an initial, the important information rather than like just going to GPT or Gemini, for example. Always talk to the real people, and obviously that at least that it will save you a lot of time of understanding the system. So thank you again, Hong. So if you don't mind to stick around because we will have some Q&A questions towards the end, and maybe that some of the question is that maybe you can help address. So the next session, if Hong help us to understand the formal system, our next session shift to how things operate in practice at the organizational and execution level. So when the legal framework is clear, but why many partnerships still struggle? Is it because of differences in how organizations make decisions, communicate, or deliver? To take us through this, it is my pleasure to introduce Matthew Gray, I just say Matt for short, who will share insight on what Vietnamese companies need to master to succeed in the Australian market. So before Matt, you take over your presentation, I really need to read out your bio or your work or your career experience. It's very extremely impressive to myself. I just know after I've just looked into your LinkedIn, and we even study at the same university about the same years. So RMIT alumni. Yeah. Matthew is an enterprise technology and operating model executive with over 20 years of experience leading very large-scale technology-enabled businesses across retail networks, regulated industries, and the FMCG distribution ecosystem. Most recently, as the CIO of Metcash, and those who are not in Australia, Metcash is a huge company, a conglomerate, and running many extremely large, big retail groups. One of them is the 3 billion independent hardware group. So at Metcash, Matt had led enterprise technology and digital operations across the network of more than 600 branded and 2,500 independent store. Wow. So huge system that you actually lead the project. So Matt repositioned technology from a traditional cost center into a commercially structured service portfolio spanning digital platforms, store system, and managed infrastructure. Matt also worked extensively across Southeast Asia, including more than a decade collaborating with Vietnamese technology firms to build hybrid sourcings and delivery models supporting Australian enterprises. So through his own company now, CGX Enterprise Partners, he now advises boards, founders, and executive teams across Australia and Vietnam on operating model transformation, cross-border partnerships, and building the governance and technology capability needed to scale. Matt, enough of me, and over to you, please.
Coming to her, I certainly wasn't expecting that kind of introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Chào mọi người. Most conversations about Australia and Vietnam really start as a cultural focused discussion. Different communication styles, different expectations, different ways of working, which is absolutely true. But my experience in practice is that those differences matter because of how they show up inside organizations. The simple truth is it shows up in how decisions are made, how people respond, and what actually happens when work gets done. Next slide, please. The point I want to make today is fairly simple. Culture matters, but not as an abstract societal idea that most people think about. It really matters because it shapes how the organizations actually operate day to day. And that's where most partnerships either succeed or quietly fail. In my experience, the friction usually shows up in three key places. One, how decisions are made. Two, what gets said, or more importantly, in this case, what doesn't get said. And then the most important is what good delivery is assumed to look like on both sides. Next slide, please. In Australian organisations, decision ownership is usually very explicit and it's usually executive. People expect to know who owns the decision, who contributes, and it's usually clear who is accountable. My experience in Vietnam is that decision-making is often a little bit more implicit. It sits naturally with hierarchy, it sits with relationships, as we just discussed with Hum, and it fits into a context. Neither is right or wrong, but when the two meet, the unspoken expectations within the decisions and the direction often only look aligned. Next slide, please. This is where the gap starts to appear when the teams come together. Australians assume, quite rightly from our cultural norms, that a decision has been fully worked through because nobody has objected. It's closed. Vietnamese teams, on the other hand, very naturally feel that they're showing alignment and respect by not challenging the idea. The problem only really appears later on when the execution begins to really become a little bit more fluid and we start to see drift in the delivery. And I will use technology as my basis because that's where most of my activity and history has come from. So it's a little bit of a technology bend. So one of my examples that I want to draw on is a very large digital platform build that my teams led. We were building a core platform. The direction was set by the local teams. Vietnamese delivery team executed exactly what was asked. The issue wasn't capability. The teams knew that there were better ways, standard functionality instead of custom development, but they didn't challenge the direction. Next slide, please. From an Australian perspective, that was really unexpected, certainly for my teams. Our default is to expect partners to push back, to bring options and thought leadership, to really challenge some of the things that we're asking for, to challenge the ideas and really land a best outcome as opposed to just what we're asking for. From the Vietnamese perspective, again, lived experience, the behavior was also correct, but they respected the direction, they delivered what was asked, and they respected a perceived hierarchy or authority over them. The consequence was pretty clear. We ended up with a really big platform that was a lot more complex and customized than it needed to be, and it made it a lot harder over time to really scale. So that was the business impact that really slowed us down. It wasn't because anyone did anything particularly wrong, but it was because the expectations about how to work together were never made clear. The organizational norms hadn't quite been bridged yet. Next slide, please. In the Australian environment, institutional delivery is expected to be predictable and repeated. We take that for granted in everything that we do. If something is agreed, it's simply expected to be delivered as stated. In Vietnam, delivery is a little bit more adaptive and fluid. Teams are usually a little bit more contemporary digital environments. They respond a lot more clearly to changing context, shifting priorities, evolving direction. Again, neither is right or wrong, but the consequence comes up pretty quickly. The expectations aren't aligned. Australians start to lose confidence in the delivery. Vietnamese teams start to feel confused. They start to feel that they're being responsive and flexible, so they don't understand where the issue is. Both sides feel that the other isn't meeting expectations, and that's really where it starts to fall apart very, very quickly. Next slide. So the real challenge isn't capability. Not at all. It's certainly not intent. Everyone's intent is sound. It's the cultural differences that really create the operating assumptions. And those assumptions are rarely made explicit early enough to be successful. Next slide. if there's one thing that I would really like to leave everyone with, it's this. Success between Australia and Vietnam doesn't come from understanding the opportunities alone. Ha mentioned that when she started a conversation. It really comes from being deliberate about how to work together.
My main contribution, and particularly later in life now, has been in a relationship with your country, or with Vietnam, and the people within it. It is a beautiful country, and has wonderful people, and is also looked upon in the world at the moment probably as the jewel in the crown, particularly within Asia, and in particular for foreign investment. I commend the leadership and what it's doing, and I commend the people and the administration as they move forward to where they'd like to be in 2045. But once again, thank you for that introduction. Okay, so most of what I talk about today will really resonate with Matt's presentation too. And as he was talking, I could picture myself observing either my staff or the partnerships that we've created or attempted to create it within Vietnam. So as I was just mentioning, Vietnam, the most important thing to recognize, first of all, is the opportunity. And the opportunity from a business point of view is significant. In particular within education, well, first of all, you're in a country, or it's a country that is an emerging economy, and it has stable leadership as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. But it's fast growing, it's politically stable, as I just mentioned, but it's also strategically driven. In other words, the leadership know where they want to go, and are prepared to do what they need to do in order to get there as well. So the key objective for the government is to become a high income country by 2045. The real opportunity, though, for businesses that really need to think about is that you need to align with Vietnam's future. In other words, position yourself to demonstrate how you will contribute to Vietnam's future. It's not just about coming here and selling. If you want to do that, it just won't work. Next one, please. Okay, the reality, the opportunity, and the complexity. Vietnam, it's as we just mentioned, high opportunity, but it's also very, very complex. A lot of what the things Matt was talking about, and the legal system that was talked about in the previous presentation too, is really very, very difficult. Systems, they're not purely procedural. We've talked about that. That's came up in the last presentations. The difference between Australia and Vietnam is Australia is very much based upon processes and systems. The thing about Vietnam is it's moving so fast. And one of the difficulties that I've experienced, particularly with the family business that I have with QTS, and then also within the university sector as well, is that the leaders are moving so fast, but the administrative system, the regulatory system, is finding it difficult to keep up. So, and that's understandable. And so, but that then leads to lots of problems and things that you need to be able to navigate, and you just cannot do it on your own as an expat or a foreigner. So you're not entering a finished system, you're entering a moving system, and one that's moving very, very fast, and it's developing. Next one, please. As already been said, trust is not negotiable in Vietnam. It's very much an historical cultural mechanism that's in place. People won't engage and move forward into a future in any way unless they trust the people that they're with. So, without trust, nothing works in Vietnam. And often businesses, and I've engaged with other businesses that have come in, are coming there with the idea of attempting to create trust, but without giving it the time or the thought on how you could actually do that. And I think the most difficult thing there is being able to overcome the constraint of your own culture. Your own culture gives you a discourse or an expectation of the way things are supposed to be done. But you need to actually embed yourself into the Vietnamese culture if you want to do business here and understand the way business is done around here, or for that matter, just the way things are done around here. So contracts matter, but relationships determine whether things actually move or not. And not just immediate relationships, it takes time. Next one, please. Most important thing, and I have seen several organizations in the education industry come into the market and leave very quickly because they attempt to do it on their own and they think that they know what needs to be done. I know how to. It's not deliberate. It's a desire to actually contribute and be a part of it, but underpinning it is a unwitting form of arrogance. Not in a negative sense. People generally want to help, but you cannot navigate the complexities of the Vietnam business and political system on your own. So partnership is absolutely essential. And I've been very, very fortunate to meet some wonderful family who, by the way, are ex-RMIT graduates as well. And now we've built that trust over years with our business. And in fact, the two families have merged and we've become very, very close. And you will need that because as an expat or a foreigner in any country, by the way, but probably most certainly within a country that's growing as fast as what Vietnam is, that you need help to understand the socio-cultural mechanisms, the political structures and how they're shifting, and then how you can navigate to get decisions made. Next one, please. Positioning. That's the real strategic question, is where you position yourself. Most businesses ask, okay, what can we sell? Look at these macroeconomic indicators. Vietnam is the place we need to be. But that's the road to not being successful. The better question when you're thinking about entering Vietnam is, how do I contribute to where Vietnam wants to go? How can I position myself to demonstrate that I am there for the future of Vietnam? How I can actually contribute to their efforts of what they're trying to do for their country. So alignment, trust, opportunity, then scale. Okay, so understanding the system, good luck with that because it shifts so quickly. Okay, but Australia, as we've already heard, it's rule-based, it's predictable, process-orientated. Vietnam, it's structured, but as I've already mentioned, it's a moving target. It's evolving, and you have to then rely upon relationships because there's too many gaps in the administrative system as it's trying its very, very best and working hard to keep up with the great leadership and the direction that the high-level leaders are moving the country in. So you need to learn how the system works in practice. And unfortunately, when we come from a system where we can rely upon the processes, you can find yourself getting into trouble, and you really need people to help you. So government direction and reform. Vietnam is actively reforming its governance. It's very aware that it needs foreign investment to help it achieve its goals. And it needs to make things easier for foreign investors in order to attract those funds. So they're reforming their government structures. We've just seen the rationalisation of many districts and provinces and also departments within the government to reduce down the bureaucracy and so forth, which means they're attempting to streamline administration and encouraging foreign investment, as I just mentioned. All these things have been done to actually position the country to be even more attractive to foreign investors. The strategic focus is the digital economy. It's also about skills. In other words, upskilling. Obviously, when a country is moving so quickly and shifting and changing, it needs to be able to have adaptability within its skills. So that's a big area. And then also then internationalization. As I've already said, Vietnam's not static. It's actively redesigning itself for growth. So common mistakes that that people make or businesses make is treating Vietnam like well, it's actually like a standard market. It's not necessarily an emerging market. It's even more complicated than other emerging markets. Don't come here thinking that it's going to be the same as what you are expecting, based upon the systems in which you've already been operating in for so many years. Over-reliance on contracts and legal frameworks, understanding time. In other words, it will take time to build trust, and work hard at that as well. Trying to operate independently, forget it. I wouldn't. It's the first path towards a failure. And short-term thinking. It needs to be a long-term approach to what you're doing. So most failures are not because Vietnam. Sorry. I'll move. Oh yeah, most failures are not because Vietnam is difficult. It's just different. It is the way things are done around here. But it's because businesses don't adapt to how it works. And you need, when you are in Vietnam, you are in Vietnam's culture. And you need to understand how things are done around here, not from where you came from. Next. Success, long-term mindset, strong partnerships, clear contribution to the national goals, positioning that way, consistent delivery, leadership presence in the country, and strategy, relationships, and patience. So Vietnam, it's one of the most dynamic environments that I've actually worked in. I've fallen in love with the country, as has my family. It offers enormous opportunity. It is the jewel in the crown with emerging economies, but it requires genuine engagement. The question is not whether there is an opportunity in Vietnam. The question is whether we're prepared to engage with Vietnam in the way that it requires us to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ray. It's you know, you just say that it's a very, very insightful when you're saying that in Vietnam, obviously that I always, when I first learn English, I'm still learning every day, is that, you know, in Rome acts as Roman. I think that it works everywhere. When you're in Vietnam, you need to understand Vietnamese. And similarly, like when you are in Australia, you also have to understand the way that Australian works. So it's the other way, the other opposite. You have to unlearn yourself, relearn. So from what, because you have, I'm sure that we have the panel discussion with more questions for you. But given you're talking about the relationship and you're taking time, and I just reflect like the Vietnamese food that I'm sure that you and every one of us here maybe are like eating. I'm sure eating that is pho.
Yeah,
Pho
sure.
would take would take hours, to cook it.
Yeah.
You can't rush. You can't rush to make a good pho.
Yeah.
You need time.
It's a very
To
good analogy.
and
Yes.
herbal. Yes. So that's something I always say, that it takes time to do things, even that you know, like you can't rush thing. It's not like fish and chips though. You can actually rush. But you just have to, you know, I've seen it says analogies, but metaphor, but it's very much the way Vietnam works.
Yeah.
That's gotta take time. And we're gonna come back with the panel discussion with you, Ray and Matt. But before I do that, so I've just noticed that there's some questions on the chat about the somebody asking about that, how to set up opening a company and bank account in Vietnam, and somebody who asked how to do the same in Australia. So this is exactly why we, the Australian Alumni Business Network, we are working on that initiatives, maybe to providing some introductions course, to study, to learn the fundamental things to conducting business in Australia, how to set up entity, open bank account, and likewise in Vietnam, because our alumni, we do have the expertise to cover both legal systems. So I note that the questions there, and it's something that we hopefully that we will be able to have some good initiatives to be able to support with the information for members. So again, thank you, Ray and Matt. So we're now moving to our panel discussions, where we bring together different perspectives from legal, operational, academic, intellectual property to explore what really happened in practice when business expand between Vietnam and Australia. So for these panel discussions, I'd really like, if you have any question, you can put into the chat here, because we have the live session. It's not a presentation at all, so that there's an opportunity for you to ask our panelists. So first we have Matt to come back. Matt, obviously with the deep experience in technology. We also joined again by Professor Ray Golden with the combinations experience in academic leadership and over 30 years of industry experience. We also have our panelists, Mr. Nhut, Nguyễn Hữu Minh Nhật. So he's a partner in the law firm Russian & Vecchi, a very reputable law firm based in Ho Chi Minh City. Mr. Nhật would have over 25 years of legal practice in Vietnam, and he has been named among Vietnam top 100 lawyers for 2025 by Asia Business Law Journal. He specializes in M&A, private equity, foreign investment, and is widely recognized for his work on complex cross-border transactions. So welcome, Nhut, on board of the panelists today. So Nhut also you also the alumni of University of New South Wales, on the same scholarship that I have been awarded 29 years ago. He just 2 or 3 years older than me. Thank goodness. So, but we are on the same scholarship. So thank you very much for your time, for giving back today. So finally, we also have Ngân Chan. So Ngân is a registered Australian and New Zealand trademark lawyers and directors of Vegas trademark attorneys. So Ngân just helping VASEA to register the trademark successfully. So thank you very much for your work. It's very seamless and easy to do and deal with you. So she holds a Master of Laws in Intellectual Property from Queensland University of Technology and a Bachelor of Laws from Ho Chi Minh City University of Law. So Ngân come with both the knowledge, then experiences from Vietnam and Australia. Ngân now based in Australia, and she obviously that I know that her works is involved helping many businesses, including Vietnamese business, to register for IP and scale their brand across the borders. So welcome you all. So when we go, what we have so far is from Sarah, from Hong, from Matt, from Ray, is that the success across Vietnam and Australia is not just about the opportunity, but also about how well we understand and adapt to different systems. So for this panel, I'd like to focus on the real lessons on the field from your own practical experience, where things actually go wrong and what business need to do differently. So Ray, let me start with you. So you work obviously extensively across both systems, Vietnam and Australia, and you touch on something very important about trust and how system operates. So in Vietnam, in practical terms, so what does a first trust building meeting in Vietnam would look like compared to an Australian one?
Actually, there are similarities in how you actually do that, but in other words, how you would deal with people. But from a business point of view, um, I'm trying to think of an example in which I could give you. But as we said before, the system, if you like, helps in doing business within Australia. In other words, the legal system is fairly stable, and not I don't want to use the word entrenched, but it's well and truly there, and we know how to work with it in order to move towards collaborative decision making that we need to actually make. However, and I have to say that in my current role as the Vice Chancellor and President of the British University in Vietnam, most of my time is taking up with dealing with the government and the regulatory system and understanding what the needs are. And it's not the systemic need. For instance, for universities and for any business, but let's say for universities, that they're in the community, for the community. Yet in Vietnam, there's a history of non-private institutions. And so when you have a private university come into a system that's not used to them, nor does it have the cultural background of private institutions, then trust becomes very, very important. Like the community, you need to actually be able to demonstrate that where you are positioned and where you are positioned to help Vietnam in their goals as they begin to move forward. Now, in order to be able to do that, though, I'll need to understand the regulatory system and how best to position ourselves so that we can run a business model and be successful, and at the same time commit resources to the needs of the nation. So can you see the different, just in me talking about understanding where that university fits and trying to position it for its future, it's a lot more complex than just relying upon a system that will enable you to actually do it. So it becomes very important that we develop relationships with the important government officials. They see substance in what we're doing. They see that we are committed to the regulations and their rules, even though they change very quickly. And that's another thing that you need to be able to do, shift and change as it moves. And so that they begin to trust you and they begin to see that you are here for the long term. You are just not a conglomerate or a private entity that's trying to come in and get some money from an economy that's moving so fast and has so many opportunities. You really need, that's the key point that I'm trying to get across in those two different systems. You need to position yourself or demonstrate your position, where in Australia, the very legal system sets up a lot of the positioning in the first place.
Yep. So obviously that from what you say, Ray, is that obviously that there's a lot of underlying things, not like Australia you mentioned, that is the government probably more clear about what they want than in Vietnam. So you need to take a time and understand the objective, the agenda of the Vietnam economies and policy in general. And then the succeed at a high level is come with that you try to work with that agenda and to show that the collaborations and the partnership in a way that work with the agenda that obviously
that you're committed to it,
that
and that
committed
the entire institution and its financial backing are committed to a position which has substance in regards to the administration and the government authorities and so forth.
Yeah. And that's something that I can resonate, because I know that you also been in a senior leadership roles at RMIT in Vietnam, and RMIT is a prime example. Is that they've been working obviously.
Yeah, they're a wonderful university. It's made such a great contribution to
we have too many RMIT alumni in these speakers both today, including Matt. So Matt, there's because you're smiling, so there's one question for you. So from your experience, have you seen situation when we're talking about that in your talk, you're talking about that culture, organizational cultures and executions, and obviously that it determined a lot of success here. So have you seen situation where both sides thought that they had alignment? You're talking about alignment when you do the project in Vietnam, and obviously later you understand their mindset, but you would expect that even that as the suppliers, you should also need to challenge the customer's request, not just obliging to every request like that. So but have you seen a situation where both sides thought that they had alignment, but they were actually operating with completely different expectations?
Almost every time. So the reality is the cultural nuance is what really drives the understanding of what is real or what is not. Vietnam comes at it from a very different place to where Australians come at it. We talked about a bit earlier the professionalism across the Australian businesses and across Australian government, and sort of the structural components of how Australia works really means it flows a particular way. In Vietnam, it's a lot more fluid. We have an economy that doesn't have as much institutional companies through their history. There's certainly a lot of institutional companies, and it's growing very, very rapidly. But I categorize the leap from developing into where Vietnam is now as much more of a first generation or second generation founder-led economy. And the structural nature of big enterprise for a long established history versus founders leading very large, very complex businesses is actually very different. It works different, it operates different, and sitting across the table from someone, what yes means on both sides of the table can actually be very, very fundamentally different things. Yes, from a Vietnamese perspective, in my examples, is very much, yep, we hear what you're saying, we're comfortable with the idea, but we'll figure it out as we go, and we'll make decisions, and things will adapt over time. Very, very normal. On the Australian side, they're just hearing yes, and I ask you do, everyone's happy. It can be that blunt force trauma simple. So the way the teams then collaborate, the way the teams come together and actually talk about what they're doing is then the critical sort of secret sauce that makes it work or it doesn't. If they're willing to challenge ideas, and this is where I've spent a lot of time working with a couple of people who are even on this call, to really challenge their team to go, I have an idea, I convey that to you. I actually want you to tell me if you think it's great or if it's silly. I would like you to give me some thought leadership in helping to shape what good looks like for us both, because then we both own it. We're both committed to it because we've co-formed it, and therefore we're much more likely to get it right over the long term. I think too many businesses and too many examples that I can think of in outsourcing is I throw a statement over the fence. They say, yep, we're going to do that. And then the two sides work in isolation, and they don't understand each other. They don't understand the context. One of the big unlocks for me has been getting Vietnamese team members, not managers, but the actual developers, the doers, the business analysts, the people who get the job done, bringing them over into Australia, and then sending my people over to Vietnam to really see the different cultures in real life. Because then you start to go, a Vietnamese person doesn't understand Bunnings. They don't understand Coles. They don't understand Kmart. But that is what we're growing. So they don't know what a big box retailer is by comparison. They're certainly learning now. There's a few examples popping up now, but it was fundamentally different to, you know, the corner store, the small format retail that Vietnam is used to. So they didn't even understand the problem statement that we're asking them to solve for. So it's really just getting the teams to understand that, one, both sides have a part to play. They're both equal partners, even if it is professional services meet organization, that they're all in it together and that we are in it together, that they're not necessarily going to know everything, but that's okay. They can figure that out together as long as they do it together.
What you touch on, Nash, is it could be, I'm not sure, in your opinion, it could be a challenge or not, because given that, and I can see that when I advising Vietnamese businesses in Australia, even a very, very large corporate, it's still the decision from the founders. So, and I can compare that with the large corporate based in Australia. They try to push down the decision making to, you know, the executives. It doesn't have to be always the founders, and the bottleneck is always the founders and shareholders. They really push down to the executive levels. Do you think it's going to be a challenge for Vietnam, given that you know, it's going to start going to the second generation now, take over very large corporate?
Absolutely a challenge, and it's where most of my conversations with CEOs and founders sit today, is really helping them understand, you know, the nature of a C-suite, what they do, how they operate, and what it means for a business to transition from founder-led to enterprise or corporate structure. We take it for granted in Australia because we've had it for a very long time. We have clear succession as part of our culture in business to really teach juniors into managers, managers into leaders, leaders into executives, and then you've got the CEO at the top. Nothing goes to the CEO unless it's a really strategic decision, because the executive suite actually takes lead on owning and driving the business. They deliver and run the business. Contrast that to Vietnam. You've got a founder-led business who's grown very rapidly. They don't have the same strength of resources coming through sort of what we consider traditional pipeline of management, leader, C-suite. So everything crosses their desk directly. Every problem statement, every opportunity, every nuance, every conversation, to a large degree, lands on their desk for a decision, which means it's not sustainable. You start to get very big, complex businesses, and they start to have a couple of CEOs running subdivisions and things like that. But it is still mirroring almost a founder-led hierarchy as opposed to a corporate structure. And I think that's the maturity step change that Vietnam is, to a degree, struggling with in my experience right now. And part of that is the leadership of very good technical people that don't have a lot of experience to lean on. They don't have a lot of examples to follow, learn, and get coached from, to really build the thought leadership and the leadership layer that's got to build into a mature C-suite, because that takes years of experience. It takes a lot of, you know, whole of business thinking, not just individual skill set thinking. And I think that's the shift that's coming. And that's certainly the conversation that I'm having with quite a number of people today, how that can play out and what it means for their business sustainably long term.
Wow, that's a lot of thought to be involved here, and it's and I can tell that people are aware of that, but it will take time for them to let go, changing yourself. I always found that changing the attitude is always the hardest thing to change. Learning to let go is very, very hard. So now that come back to the legal reality on the ground, to Australia, come to Vietnam. So Mr. Nhut, let me bring you in here. So from a legal perspective, what are the most common challenges you see foreigners face, or when they actually try to enter Vietnam, especially during the setup and licensing process. We have questions about how to set up the bank account. You can speak to Mr. Nhật and Russian and Vichy. They are very good. So obviously that, on to you, Mr. Nhật. Yeah.
Thanks, Ha. Can you hear me? All right.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. It is an honor to be in this panel. For that particular question, I think I can only echo what Professor Gordon and Matt have previously pointed out during their presentations and their observations. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges for foreigners coming to Vietnam is to understand the system, but it's not that simple to understand a system like Vietnam, because it just has its very own way of doing things, especially when it comes to licensing for investment. Well, to be fair though, Vietnam has always been trying to attract foreign investment. Vietnam has always been trying to make it more accommodating and clear, transparent for foreign investment to come in. If I look back at the past few decades, when I started practicing law in Vietnam, the law for foreign investment was very self-contained. You have a very specific law that dealt with just foreign investment. Now you have a much broader, more developed, a lot more robust legal system to help with foreign investment. But the thing is, like Professor Gordon pointed out, things are not static in Vietnam, including the legal system, including the laws. Rules keep changing regularly, and the way the laws or the regulations are implemented, I think, also are not static. Rules are not always implemented the way they're written in black letters. The implementation of regulations, I think, lies in a large part on the discretion of the government officials you're dealing with. So it's a challenge really to navigate through, to understand all the nuances within the legal system. Just take a very, very fundamental example. You have a national law for foreign investment, for licensing, for incorporation of companies. But if you do it in Bac Ninh, it's different than doing it in Ho Chi Minh City. Things like that. I mean, it's sort of, it takes time to understand and to adapt and stay with the current. So understanding the system is a need, is a must, but it's a challenge at the same time.
From what I still don't envy your job, Mr. Nhật, because of the constantly evolving and changing in terms of the degrees, law, interpretation of law. And you also mentioned that even that if you try to register the company in a certain province, you may have different dealing with different people. It may be different to if you change it to different province. So sometimes you need to speak to the right people to get things done. So unlike in Australia, because of the way that registrations of company have been pushed up to the federal levels, and everything have done digitally, so we don't deal with the real human being. We deal with machine, and therefore it's very extremely easy to set up companies. Well, I understand that in Vietnam, that you still have to obviously register a company, for example, at a lower levels, not at the the top levels like federal levels like in Australia. And then I've heard that you also have to do all that investment registrations as well. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Well, Vietnam still, in a certain extent, differentiate the processes for local and foreigners. For foreigners, you require more steps and more procedures, more filings. But it's getting much better now. I think it's but still, yes, you do have to have a lot of registrations to go through. And yeah, you deal with different authorities. Well, the thing is, I think Professor Gordon pointed out earlier, part of the education is to understand how the decision process entails in Vietnam. In Vietnam, we usually joke that, well, everyone in the government is involved in the decision-making process, but no one is responsible. So it's hard to sort of come to grip with that notion. Decisions are, for complex matters, decisions are usually, handed out at the local level, but they are required to get input or clearance from above, from the central government. And oftentimes it's sort of the intra-ministerial process is sort of a collective effort, pushing things through, and you have to deal with a lot. You're not dealing with one person at the front desk. You have to know what's going on behind the scenes and stuff like that. So,
yeah. I certainly don't think there's the DIY, do-it-yourself, setting up your own company is the way to go in Vietnam. Better to engage a lawyers to do it if you are foreigners, because it involves a lot of technical steps and registrations. I can see that because I'm actually doing the opposite with Mr. Nhật in Vietnam, which I'm set up entities for the locals, Australian, and also the foreigners. There is no different process in terms of setting up company that are owned by shareholders overseas or local. The way that I can say that the government of two countries, they control things differently. In Australia, they control things by, for example, if you want to buy properties, for example, is the natural resources, then you need to, and especially those in relation to residential properties, which the housing shortage in Australia is very prominent, then you need to, seek for, applications to get approval. But other than that, if you just simply want to invest in the financial market, but not, in minings or properties, like I mentioned, then you don't have to do any submissions or approval. But in Vietnam, the government look at the source of fund, because later, if you want to invest in Vietnam, but also you want to take the fund back, that you really need to have that investment registrations, I believe, to be able to transfer the fund out of the country. So is that correct? Is that Mr. Nhật? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Vietnam comes to the world, is open to the world, but it's within its own system. It's still a very planned economy to a great extent, and also it's very very tightly controlled in terms of foreign currency. Foreign investment, foreign capital needs to go through a very structured route in order to be, compliant and to ensure and to avoid issues down the path. Just a very simple example. Every foreign invested company in Vietnam is required to have a special account where the foreign investor, foreign owner, is supposed to channel the investment, the capital through. if you don't do that, you have problems later on trying to exit or trying to remit dividends, stuff like that, because it has to come in the right way so that it can come out the right way. That's how the government is sort of regulating and controlling foreign exchange. Another example is, because, for example, from overseas, you see your business in Vietnam need, money in a very short period of time so that they can deploy it in a project. You just should send money in, for example, as a loan. But there are certain requirements for sending money in as loan in Vietnam as well, especially when if the loan is required to be registered with the central bank. We've seen many cases where foreign businesses just send money in without registering, without the proper registration. When they try to get the money back out, they couldn't, because they have no proof or record of registration in the first place. So issues that, for example, an omission of a particular formality a couple of years ago could become unpreparable. You cannot fix it. Things like that. So yeah, I mean, there are little things, the granular things, but it could become very big issues.
Yep. Excellent point, Mr. Nhit. Obviously, that we can see that we can't just take the same approach like Australians, very like not really controlling in that way, and to apply the same way in Vietnam. So certainly that's it's a point to think about, and also to make sure that you get the right advice before you actually enter the Vietnam market. So when we on this legal thing, let's bring Ngân on intellectual properties into the conversation. So Ngân, we talk about the system, the legal structures and trusts, but one area where mistakes are very costly is intellectual property. Yeah. So from your experience, what are the most common IP mistake business make when entering a new market like Australia? I know that you are assisting a lot of Vietnamese business to register their IP, and you have kindly prepared some information for us here.
Yes, hello everyone. I think there are several common mistakes, and today I would like to highlight 3 common ones. So the first one, can you please? Yeah. So the first one is when the business owner do the business in Australia, when they register their company name or business name with ASIC. So ASIC in Australia, which is equivalent to Departments of Planning and Investment in Vietnam, they thought that, okay, register with ASIC, it means the brand is protected, but it's not, because in Australia, and I think similar in Vietnam, if you want your brand is protected, you have to register your trademark with IP Australia, I mean Intellectual Property Office, not with ASIC. Yeah, that's the first one. And the second one is some client told me, hey, my trademark is protected in Vietnam, so it means no one in Australia can use it. But that is not correct, because trademark protection is territorial. It means you cannot transfer the like, for example, your trademark is protected in Vietnam. It doesn't mean that you have like that trademark protection in Australia. If you come to enter into Australia and you want to do the business here, you have to file it with the IP Australia again. And that is the second one. And the third common mistake is they think like, okay, some people tell me like, okay, no, I will sort out about trademark registration later when my business grows. But it's not, because as you can see on the slide on the left, without IP protection, you start a business, pick a name, register it with the ASIC, and then you assume that like your trademark is protected, but it's not. And then you invest heavily in the brand, like build reputation, gain customers. And then IP problem services. For example, someone else like file your brand first, and then they require you to rebranding. So as you can see, the cost for rebranding or legal fees normally is more expensive than registers early. On the right, you can see like with the IP protection, you register your trademark, your brand is protected, and then you can you can invest confidently in the brand or even expand into the new markets. But yeah, as I said, you should file your IP or your trademark in each market before entering. So they are like some common mistakes that my client often have when they from Vietnam and they want to do the business in Australia.
And thank you so much. I know that you, as you, like I briefly, because I'm aware of that you've been doing a lot of registration of IP and trademark for people from other countries in Australia. So, do you have a real example that will bring this to life, and how important it is to have an IP registered sooner rather than later?
Yes, today I would like to share with you a real case. Maybe some of you already know this case. Like as you can see on the slide, for Athens branch, which is very famous branch in Vietnam. And I noticed that all the information I share today, you can easily get it from internet because it's publicly available. Mr. Things used his fame in Vietnam to start a business in Australia as a business partnership with the local partner named Post Lifestyle Company. But later, this company filed a trademark application for Thin and the logo. Mr. Thin didn't know it. And when he filed it, he opposed the trademark application with IP Australia. But Mr. Thin oppositions failed, and the trademark belonged to the local partner. So that's the reason why now Mr. Thin cannot use his own brand and name for restaurant services in Australia. And while I'm preparing this slide, I searched it online, and it seemed like Mr. Thin is still doing business in Australia with another partner, but he have to use another brand like 14 Hanoi. And he also tried to apply to register his branch with IP Australia, but it seemed like the application is pending because I think it's not easy for him to get the trademark approval due to the prior registration of the local partner. What lesson do we learn from this case? That is, before entering in any business relationship or signing any contract, please secure your IP or your trademark first. Yeah, but the story didn't stop here. As you can see on the slide, the same company, Post Lifestyle Company, also registered multiple well-known Vietnamese brands, not only from Vietnam, but from other countries. As you can see on the slide, this company not only registered for 14 brand, they also registered for bánh mì Huỳnh Hoa. It's also a famous brand for selling bánh mì in Vietnam. Jinfer, this is a famous brand from Korea. Phở Lý Quốc Sư, and even Phúc Long tea and coffee. Luckily, Phở Lý Quốc Sư and Phúc Long, those companies have filed it and they opposed the trademark application. So that is the reason why Post Lifestyle Company didn't file successfully, the trademark. And while I'm preparing this slide, I also know that this company is also applying for Phở Minh. And I searched it online, and it seemed like Phở Minh is also another famous brand in Vietnam. And if no one opposes, so I think Post Lifestyle Company could be the trademark owner as well. So that is the real case I would like to share with you today. Yeah.
Thanks. Let me think about its trademark is it's not similar, but it's just very much like you have the domain name. I remember that my clients, like got to buy back, for someone who registered domain name for thousands of dollars, because obviously that somebody registered beforehand. So it's very important. A clear message here, very important that when you even that when you're thinking that you're gonna going or overseas, it may be, you need to protect your brand first. Clearly, in this case, that they start doing, a lot of people that know that the local brand, and they start thinking to do registrations. Like in 13, for example, he lost because he can't challenge the registrations, given that it has done before he could. So, how much is it? Does it cost to register all of that? Yeah.
For the cost, like the first one is the government fees. It's cost of like 250 per class. Yeah, please note per class. And for the professional fee, the service fees, it's called, varies by firm, but it ranges from like 500 to thousands dollar. Depends on the complexity of each case. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the cost.
Sure. And yet, is it the IP cost in Vietnam per class? I think much cheaper. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, we also charge by class and also by the amount of products in the class. So yeah, it's just roughly more or less the same cost.
Yeah, I think the fee is probably the same, but I think the government charge probably less. Is that right? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's the $250 per class is the IP Australia, the government charge. But I think in Vietnam maybe $200,000. I can't remember. I think so.
Yeah, just a couple. I think it's less than $50.
$10.
Less than $50, and
yeah. So clearly, it's a very important area. I'm very conscious of time. We only have 7 minutes to the webinar, so maybe I've just finished with a closing questions for everyone in the panel. Probably start with Ray, please. If a business entering a new market tomorrow, what is the one thing that they must get it right from day one?
I would say the first thing is to recognize that your existing, what could I call it, culture and frame of reference will hinder you and stop you from seeing things when you come in to try, whether it's through legal or whether it's through managing the people within the organization and working within the people within the organization. You need to sort of be able to learn how to relearn and be prepared to do that. It's a tough skill to develop, but it's crucial for doing business in Vietnam. The other thing too, I'd say, is that communication, because of the construction of meaning within the 2 different languages, is the other thing that exhausts me every day. You can think that what you've just said has been clearly understood, even with people who speak a fluent English language, but you find out 2 days or 2 weeks later it's understood as something else. So you just need to have time, not allow your own culture to cause you, or your cultural meaning systems to cause you to become frustrated, and understand that you are in Vietnam, and you need to learn the way things are done around here, both officially and non-officially.
Can agree more, Ray. So no, when we're talking about the entering a new market, which is entering Vietnam, what would you have to say, anh Nhật, to one thing that they must get it right, Australian business owner must get it right from day one when they go to Vietnam?
Oh, yeah, from my perspective, then I think it's, well, I cannot say, better than Professor Gordon just did, but I think, yeah, and the key thing is to get the things right in the beginning, from the start, get a right legal structure in place, and things will move from there. to get to that point, then I think it requires a lot of preparation, a lot of homework, and of course, getting the right input, right advice from people on the ground is also a key point.
Yep, absolutely. And Nash, over to you. What if the Vietnamese business want to go to Australia? What's one thing do you think that they must get it right from day one?
So certainly echo those points, but one thing that I crash into with a lot of founders is the perception about how relationships will shift things. Vietnam is very good at someone coming in over the top and moving the needle, so to speak. Australia doesn't function that way. So you can't just meet someone higher up and expect that they can remove some of the barriers. Our barriers are very structured. Our engagements are very structured. Our way of working is very straightforward if you know how to navigate it. So curiosity and work with the people that you're working with, as opposed to thinking that you can potentially find someone higher that'll overrule them. That doesn't happen in Australia.
Fantastic point. I think there's I think that I can see Hong smiling and totally agree with 1,000 of thumbs up. Yes. How about Nguyen? Is there any one thing I'm sure that they should contact Megas to get their registered trademark done before they even arrive to Australia, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, from like IP perspective, I think like my advice is check your brand early and don't assume it's available. So I think that step can save you from costly problem later. Yeah, that is.
Thank you so much. It's very, very, very helpful. So I think that we pretty much time. So we've covered a lot of ground over the last 2 jam-packed hours. So we heard from Sarah representing the government, from legal experts like anh Nhật, Hồng, Ngân, from all the business leaders, Ray and Nat, about the how-to Australia and Vietnam, and we look at the maps, the laws, and the do and the don'ts. But if there's one thing that I hope that you may take away today, it is. I think so. Personally, I think there's no single magic set of skills that guarantees success. So the real secret is that in our own ability to unlearn what we think we know and to relearn on the fly, and truly embrace the cultural nuances, differences that make this market and countries, different and vibrant and interesting. So before we part ways, so I want to leave you with one powerful visual that I just look at from one of the Facebook from a guy named John, and he put that there. So when I first actually saw this through the lenses of a person called Michael McQueen. He's a change strategist, a best-selling author. When I attended his talk 5 weeks ago, and he was also amazed about the traffic in Vietnam. Look at this photo of Vietnamese transport. To an outsider, it might look like chaos, but to those who live in it, and I did, and I've been, and I am, it is perfectly synchronized flow. So it is a masterclass in adaptation. Everyone is moving. Everyone is adjusting, and everyone is getting to their destination because they aren't rigid and they are fluid. In your term, Nat, you say fluid. So obviously Vietnam, and here's the comment, and I love the comment. Traffic will avoid you. You cannot avoid traffic. Orders in the disorder, respect and patience. Very interesting with one photos, and people think different ways. And I like the most organized chaos, and look like crazy traffic, but everyone tolerates everyone else. I really like this comment. And last but not least, take a deep breath and have faith. Anyhow, so I think that's visual photographs show a lot of things, that Vietnam and Australia are both a lands of immense opportunities. Yes, there's complexity, there are hurdles, but you don't have to jump them alone. I think achieving success is in a new environment may come down to a few things. For me, I think it's having an open mindset, unlearn, relearn continually, having the right information, and more importantly, the right networks. So that's come to, obviously that's, I've got that there. The greatest risk of, in a time of rapid change isn't taking a wrong step, it's standing still. You can't avoid the traffic. So talking about having the right information and more importantly, the right networks. So if you are yet member of AABN network, I'd like to personally invite you to join us. This isn't just any network, it's a community of people who genuinely want to see you succeed. We are individuals who understand the heartbeat of both countries, like all of us here, speakers here. And most importantly, we are who believe in the power of giving back. So just as we've seen in the generous time shared by our speakers today. So before I leave you, AABN will have a forum on the 9th of April in Ho Chi Minh City, in Saigon, at Vinpearl Landmark. If you are in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh City, please feel free to register and meet many of the speakers. The forum about the Green Transition Forum, it attracts the most high-profile speakers and the network that you can see and get contact with if you are in sort of like green transition industry or just getting to know other people. So thank you once again to all the speakers today for your support and your commitment. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone joining us today for your time, your energy and your curiosity. Matt, you say about curiosity. And let's keep moving forward together, and goodbye.
Sorry, chị Hào, can we stay for one minute? Can everyone, can you open the camera so we can take a picture together to capture memory, and we can share that with you after the webinar ended. Thank you. Yeah, just 1 minute. Please, everyone, can you open your own camera so we have a memory together? Thank you again, all the speakers who share your amazing insight and expertise today. Thank you, Chị Hào, for the wonderful host. Okay, so maybe I will ask everyone, if you can open the camera, please open your camera. If not, that's fine too. Then we can take a picture. My team will do that. I will count 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now let's do this. I will count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Wait a second. Are you ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 with the heart.
And thả tim.
Yeah, the heart. With the heart. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. And I just also leave it in the chat box, the form. If you have time and you want to have more information about how AABN can support you to build your business across Australia and Vietnam, please take 2 minutes to fill the form so we can keep follow up with you after this webinar. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, the speaker. Thank you, Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Yeah, take care. Thank you. Bye.